France and Argentina this weekend, folks, looks to be one of the games of the year, on paper anyway. Rank 4 against rank 5 in the world, so very evenly matched sides, both playing some exciting rugby and both seemingly in a pretty good place. The Argentinians may have lost at the last week's game against Ireland, but it was close, and they've been having a pretty good year overall. Victories over the Box, the All Blacks, and the Wallabies. The French coming off a win also over the ABs last week, albeit a 1-point game. Yeah, lots to play for in this one. We'll go through the squads which have been announced, some stats, recent history predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how you reckon this one is going to go. It's the only other Friday game, so I would imagine this one is pretty much must-watch viewing, isn't it? It's on at a pretty reasonable time. At least for me here in New Zealand. For the French, they have made a few changes from the side which played the All Blacks last week, namely a new tight head prop in Uini Atonio. He comes in for the injured Tatafu. Didn't last long in that game against the All Blacks, so the veteran is back in. Malvaka and Klo are the two other front rowers, so there's no change with those guys. Malvaka sometimes ends up on the flank, and he tends to be one of the French top tacklers. He had 16 last week, which is not a bad shift, but the French pack generally got through quite a few. Flamand and Meafu, that is a great little duo in the second row. I say little, there's nothing little about Meafu. He is an absolute man mountain, and will be certainly adding some weight to that French pack, which outweighs the Argentina one pretty comfortably. Kroos is there at number 6. I always forget with French names if you pronounce the S or not. Is it Kroos or is it Kroos? He is a tackle machine, whatever his pronunciation is. He's been injured and unavailable for the last few rounds, but he tends to be France's top tackler when he plays. He's back into the 23. There's no Aldrit for this one, with Kroos being in. I would imagine that's a factor, but if he plays 80, I would be surprised if he doesn't tackle the house down. Boudillon shifts to the number 7 jersey for this one. He's been a big physical presence in that French pack in the last few games, and then Olivon is up from the bench to start at number 8. It's unusual to see no Aldrit, but yeah, there's still some very good back rowers in France, even if Aldrit is not there. Dupont and Ramos, that is the same 9-10 combo as the last couple of games. Interestingly, Dupont kicked more than he ran last week. He's usually pretty prolific in terms of his running game, but he kicked 9 times last week. I think he only ran 6 and kicked a bit more than Ramos, so they kicked a little bit more off 9 than last week. It'll be interesting to see if they maintain that, because remember, they didn't have a lot of possession last week. If they get a bit more ball against the Argentinians, they may look to get Dupont more into the running game. Ramos was the top back for the French attacking running game last week, and his ability to set up the winger BLBRA was something of a thing of beauty. Moefana and Fiku, that is a unchanged midfield. Likewise, the back 3 only sees one replacement with Barre. Come back in, he played against Japan a fortnight ago, so he comes in back in at fullback. Villiers and BLBRA are the wingers. BLBRA is absolute lightning. So if you give that guy any space, if they leave any space in the backfield, the French will kick through to him, and he will likely be the fastest man to the ball. We saw that in evidence last week. Bench-wise, they've got Marchand, Wardy, and George-Henri Colombe, so that is the same as last week. Colombe had a heap of work to do last week. He was under a bit of pressure at scrum time and had to make a lot of defensive plays, more minutes than he would have been used to being playing. I heard he had a bit of a stomach problem as well, so fingers crossed he's back to 100% this week. Roumat, who was the top tackler and top lineup man for France last week, he drops to a bench role. Guillard and Gazzotti are there on the bench as the other forward replacements. Gazzotti will be getting his debut, so congratulations to him. And Legarec and Gaetan are the only 2 back replacements, so it is a 6-2 split for the French, potentially getting a bit out of the forwards for this one. Now, for the Argentinians, they have kept their starting 15 the same, but made a handful of changes on the bench. Gajo, Montoya, and Sclavi will need to be fronting up at scrum time because, as I mentioned, the French pack outweighs them by a significant margin. Petit and Rubiolo are the 2 locks. Rubiolo has been really impressive this tour. He's been tackling the house down. 19 last week against Ireland. Anytime you're getting towards 20, you're having a pretty good outing. In the back row, Matera, Gonzalez, and Oviedo, they get a lot of carries through the back row to the Argentinians. 3 of their 4 top ball carriers last week were the 3 back rowers, and Oviedo led the way with 19. Matera had 15. And their top back for getting the carries is that key man, Thomas Albornoz. He's got a new halfback this week with Gonzalo Garcia getting the nod at 9. I think he looked to speed the ball up a little bit last week, which helped Albornoz's style. But Albornoz is the key link-up man to a lot of what the Argentinian guys do. He leads the way on attack. He's very happy to take the ball to the line and set up the guys around him. He's got a bit of gas about him too. So you feel like if shutting him down is something the French can achieve, then they'll be putting themselves in a better position in this game. Potentially, you could say likewise the same with Dupont for France. The midfield of Moroni and Cinti remains unchanged, and then Iscaro continues on the right wing. They've been known to kick him a few high balls in recent times. Delgui with the fleet footwork on the left, and then Juan Cruz Malia, who is having a hell of a year at fullback. He's potentially the most dangerous man outside Albornoz in that backline, maybe more than Albornoz. Run meters, defenders beaten, clean breaks, tries, whatever you want it. He's been providing it, even the offloads. He is certainly the guy to watch at fullback. Replacements, Ruiz, Calles, and Cordella. That is the same as last week in terms of the front rowers. Molina, who's also having a bit of a breakout year, going from, making his Pumas debut to earning himself a contract over in the Premiership. And Marcos Kremer is the only forward change on the bench, so he comes back into the 23. He's a big unit of a man if they're looking to add a bit of bulk. Bazan Velez is the replacement halfback. Mateo Carreras, who's been off looking after a new baby, comes back into the side. And Santi Carreras is there in the number 22 jumper. So 5-3 split for the Pumas boys. Stats-wise, France, I've mentioned before, are not really a possession team. They are a territory team. But they certainly proved last week there was an extreme example against the All Blacks. They only had 39% possession, and yet they still managed 3 tries to the All Blacks 2, which highlights how well they were doing on defense. And the last 5 matches, interestingly, the French have been a great quarter 3 team. Whatever they're doing at halftime in the analysis is proving pretty well. They've scored tries in each one of their last 5 matches in the start of the second half. They've been averaging pretty much 14 points and conceding 6. So it is a deadly period for the French boys. And they've been getting the maul team going. They've got a big pack. They got it going against the All Blacks. The All Blacks virtually didn't dare maul it against the French. They had 6 mauls in their last game against the All Blacks, which is second equal for the most amount of mauls they've done this year. So it will be interesting to see if they maul up against a pack in the Pumas, which is even lighter than the All Blacks one was last week. The Argentinians, they only managed a couple of clean breaks against Ireland, so they were kept pretty quiet in that regard. Only the 1 try, which was that man Malia. But their breakdown work was phenomenal. They won 6 turnovers, and they were able to convert that defensive pressure into points when they would kick their goals. They kicked 100% of them to keep the scoreboard ticking over. Their line-out continues to be solid, averaging over 90%, which is among the best of the Tier 1 teams this year. But as I mentioned, their pack, it's 50 plus kilos lighter than the French one, so we'll need to front up physically, especially with 1 less forward on the bench. Recent history largely goes France's way, with 4 of the last 5 games being French wins. Average score 27-20 to the French. Remember, there is 1 Argentinian win in there, which is the most recent game when they played earlier in the year. But we need to remember that touring side from the French was a somewhat experimental side with virtually none of the players in this game also playing. In that game, there would have been a handful, but not many. The last time Argentina got a win over France in France was back in 2014. So it is a decade ago. Only a handful of players who played in that game are still around. Petty played for the Argentinians in that game, and Olivon and Antonio were on the bench for France. Predictions-wise, it is predicted to be a French win at home. 10 points, say the bookies. Rugby forecast algorithm is a little bit more conservative, saying by 7 points. It is on Stade de France. Englishman Luke Pearce is the ref. It's a 9-10 local kickoff for you guys in France. It's a pretty good time for us in New Zealand because that's 9-10 in the morning, 12-hour difference. So perfect stuff. Get up, watch some rugby on a Saturday morning for me, Friday for the locals. You guys let us know your thoughts on this one. Can you see the French being upset at home, or are they going to be too good for a very good in 2024 Pumas side? Subscribe to the channel. I appreciate you getting all the way to the end of the video. You guys take care, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.